The question asking me to create a sidecar. Should I create another container beside another container? Wait, the documentation said using the init containers. So which one should I use? Oh my god, I'm running out of time. I think sidecar question is actually really common in the exam. And I dare you, you will actually facing one of this question. So let's live solving this question. Okay, you can pause the video and read the question. So the first thing you need to do is checking what do we have right now. So clearly we have a deployment in a web apps namespaces. So let's see what is inside that deployment. So the command that we're going to do is get deployment. The namespaces is web app. We have a one deployment. It's called nginx. So we're probably going to need the nginx. So the way that I want to do is try to download this YAML file. Okay, let's see what we actually have inside that YAML file. So we can vim. This is the deployment. If you already know what to do, and that is the good situation that you want it to be. So you just don't need to look at the documentation. But if you don't, you have a short-term memory, you can still look up the documentation, but you have to be really fast. So I'm going to show you how to look up the documentation. So you're going to click on the documentation. What we're going to search term is sidecar. So it should pop up for the first link. So the best way for you to do is do the kind, because it's going to go directly into the YAML file. Don't try to scroll down. And you will see this is the example YAML file yet that you can answer for this question. As you can know, when we're talking about a sidecar, you can actually have a two container. The normal way that you will do is to have one container and second container, and then it's going to share the volume. Okay, so that's a traditional way to do it. But there's a caveat. If you look into the YAML file, there's actually two containers that is totally different. We have like init containers and we also have container. So when you go into the exam and you see this question and you're confused, that is about right. That is a trap over there. Depends on how the question is going to ask you. You get two choices. But before we can answer this question, let me to go through the architecture, and then you have a better understanding which container we're going to use. Are we going to use the init or no init? I have a simple analogy to explain this concept, so I hope that you can actually grasp the concept easily. So consider this scenario. You have a tiny kitchen, you have a boss, and you have an employee. We need to consider three scenarios. First one, for the normal init container, the boss going into the kitchen, and then the employee see that the boss is making his coffee. The company's policy is that the boss inside the kitchen is really important for him to do his job. No employee can interrupt him. So that is the policy. Once he finished his coffee and he walked out of the kitchen, now the employee can enter the kitchen. So this is the normal init container. Okay, now let's talk about the native sidecar. So for the native sidecar, there's a little bit different. Consider this scenario. The boss going to the kitchen, and then the employee see that boss is there. So he kind of waited, but the boss tell the employee, say, hey, it's okay, you can come in to work alongside with me, that's fine. So the employee happily go into the kitchen, and then he can make his own coffee as well. The boss still need to be there, can walk alongside with the employee, that's fine. And the employee doesn't have to wait for it. He can start on making his own coffee. So there's a caveat for the native sidecar, because in the documentation, we have this restart policy always. So what does that mean? Now consider in this scenario, if the boss stay in the kitchen forever, he live there, he never exit, he never go out. So what happened is the employee actually stuck here. He will never enter the kitchen because the company policy. Remember, why would someone need this kind of scenario? Well, you don't, because this is a mistake. So the differences is the native sidecar doesn't really leave the kitchen, so they never exit it. It would just like stay there and working, but the employee can just like enter the kitchen, no problem. Maybe we have another employee as well. When they go into the kitchen, they just like doing their own thing. Compared to the normal init, they have to wait for him to finish, right? Right now, you don't need to wait for it. you're going to do your own thing. That is the native sidecar. Now let's talk about the classic sidecar, which is in this picture, we will not have any boss, right? What do we have? We have another employee. They can both go into the kitchen, do their coffee, or later time they can exit. Doesn't matter. The classic sidecar here, the order doesn't matter. But with scenario 1 and 2, the order does matter. The manager have to be in the kitchen first. Then you're gonna do your own thing. So I hope this one can actually clear your doubt. Now, if you're looking into this YAML file, we have a container. We have one container and another container. That means two containers living in a pod. Employee and employee situation. Order here doesn't really matter. The pod can come and go just like that. So this one is the really easy one to understand. So what would be the best case for this one? You just don't care about the order. Whoever starts first doesn't really matter. Now let's talk about the init container. So by the really nature, if we don't have the restart policy here, just standalone init container. So the rule is that the container have to wait until the init container finished working. So that scenario is like a boss going to the kitchen making a coffee, and the employee have to wait outside. He cannot join. He cannot go into the tiny kitchen because the company doesn't like that. So that is how the init container was designed originally. When the employee can enter the kitchen, when the boss finished his coffee and he leave the kitchen, then the employee can enter the kitchen. But if the init container has the restart policy always, what that means is the orders still matter. The manager still have to go into the kitchen first, and then the second would be the employee coming to the kitchen. However, once the boss is set up and here's the key, he never leave the kitchen and he stay. He tell the employee, hey, you can come work alongside me. The employee doesn't have to wait. So he can join the party and then work alongside with the init container. So that is what we call the native sidecar. That's a trap that a lot of students doesn't understand when they remove the restart policy always. Say for example, your init container is actually held the lock, and then your intention is to running the lock forever. So what happens if you remove that restart policy always, and then your container is gonna hang there because the init container treat as like a normal init container. So other container have to wait for you to finish. So by the very nature, your init container supposed to run forever. So the other container will not actually stop because everyone's waiting for you and you're not going out of the kitchen. So that's a problem. What happened is probably some security gonna drag you out of the kitchen, right? At the end. So for an administrator, you will have to kill that init container and you will have to remember it on the exam. If you have been watching this far, make sure to do subscribe this channel because it's gonna help many of the educational channel like this one. Thank you. So now go back to our question. Which container should we use? Should we use init container or should we using normal container? So you have to read the question very carefully. So the question is, this container should continuously tailor the access log. By reading that, so you get the idea of something have to continue to do that, right? I don't want to be interrupted. So for that earlier analogy, it's just like a boss, right? I don't want somebody to bother me. I just want to do my thing. So now you have an idea. So in this case, we could just use the init container. So I'm going to demonstrate that. We go back to the documentation. We have the init container. So a lot of things that you can actually reuse. But the first thing we have to put is the volume. So the volume is number one thing I will actually copy. So I'm going to copy this one. Make sure the volume is put outside of the container. Why? Because they are going to be shared by two containers. Just remember that. What's the name of the volume? The name is called share log. You have to change this accordingly. Now, this is the normal container. So like we said before, this one doesn't care about the order, okay? But we still need to have a volumeMount. So we're gonna put the volumeMount inside that container. Okay, I'll put that after the name. So this specifically for them, and make sure to line up your YAML file because if it doesn't line up, it will gonna cause you a mark or even no mark. So the mount path should be at here. And then copy that one. And the name is also not correct. It's not called data, it should be called share log. Now we're gonna work on our init container. So the init container is here, and then we just copy this init container. Make sure the init container is actually different type of container. So don't put it inside the container, but put it outside of the container. What's the name of the init container? It's called metric agent. And what is the image? It's called Alpine the latest, so it is already Alpine, which is great. The one thing that we need to change is where to tailor this log. So we only change this log. You need to make sure on exam what they're asking for. Sometimes it's not this command. Sometimes it could be any different Linux command. So you have to be careful with what they're asking, right? But here we just like tailor this access log. So don't forget there's a volumeMount, and we also need to change the name as well. And also the mount path is going to be different as well. There you have it. And this is the sidecar question, and I'm gonna save it. And final step is important. You have to apply to it, right?